Let's do this. I'm going live a minute early. I have so much content, I don't even know where to begin. I'm talking with the Digibyte community, and I totally got to get into stuff for. I'm going to have to save it for another stream. There's just way too much content and totally not enough time to cover. We got Digibyte just nibble in the house. Yes, I got my crew. This is going to be a hot, hot stream. All right, so originally I wanted to talk about finding entries on Ren Link Lend because these things are basically parabolic. I got the charts up here. Ren, that's the weekly. That's the weekly for Link. This is the weekly for Lend, and we're going to get into this towards the end of the stream. Lend is a bit of an outlier to the theme I want to talk about today, but it's parabolic, so that's where it fits into the picture. Ren and Link are basically core components of where I'm going to hit on today. Nothing. I'm flipping through my web pages and I got the intro screen up. Um, I'll get back to that. I basically flipped through Ren, Link, and Lend real quick. But going back to the beginning, there's nothing hot really to talk about in my Twitter feed, so let's just start and jump into it. The big macro narrative I want to talk about today is China. It's absolutely going to consume the world, what's playing out. And they're not building on Ethereum. They're going to be building on Cosmos. The BSN is directly integrating with basically Cosmos. The big hot stuff going on right now is IrisNet. Um, and their business is going to be integrated. Basically with blockchain technology, and they are going real deep into Chainlink, deploying Chainlink nodes all over the country. Um, Chainlink is blockchain agnostic. It has nothing to do with it. Obviously, it operates on Ethereum. It's an ERC20 token, but it works on any blockchain, be it Cosmos or Polkadot, and that is just massive. And that's where we're going to head into with the first Cosmos uh, blockchain that I want to talk about, which is Band Protocol. Band was initially launched on Ethereum, and they've since migrated to a Cosmos sidechain, which is basically what Cosmos is doing. Same with Polkadot, but Polkadot is substantially less mature, but Cosmos is way into mainnet, and they got sidechains, and it is obviously the biggest reason why China has targeted Cosmos. It has all the solutions that the Ethereum network is looking for. Um, Network congestion is offloaded to the side chains, and that's exactly why Band made the swap to a Cosmos side chain. Band, they have funding. It's an Oracle. They're in the DeFi, in the Oracle space, and there's so much room in the Oracle space, which is essentially why I want to get to the Link chart. The Link community is spot on. Link is a systemic disruption. Band is not going to disrupt a systemic disruption, as I've talked about. You cannot disrupt an ongoing destruction. But if Link goes 100x and Band finds 10, 15, 20% of the market, this is a hell of a project. And frankly, I'm finding myself more and more fascinated with the Cosmos ecosystem, and which will lead into Polkadot, but Cosmos is more mature and deployed as compared to Polkadot. But Polkadot and both Cosmos, they have so much developer activity, and that's the reason Ethereum is hot. The developer activity on Ethereum is where it's at. That's where everything is being done. The entire DeFi space, it's all Ethereum. But guess what? The DeFi, the interoperability, it's there's a developer arms race going on right now with Polkadot and Cosmos. The business integration and the business functionality. So this is where it's at. So interoperability, cross-chain functionality protocols, that is going to be huge. And there's the Ren that's in the crosshairs. But frankly, Syscoin is also in the crosshairs. Let's see how Syscoin's momentum catches. Syscoin has been in the game for a long time, and they have cross-chain solutions. So frankly, for me, Syscoin is a no-brainer to have. It's very small market cap. I've had a Syscoin masternode for years. That's the type of thing you throw in your back pocket and you forget about. They just have tremendous potential, and it's, I mean, obviously, depending on a person's total investment into the crypto space, it could be expensive. I think I'll give you a number. Syscoin Masternode. Oh goodness, sorry, clicking on another screen. Syscoin Masternode runs uh, about $3,400 currently. And if you look at the historical highs for it, yeah, 30, 40, 50 grand for a masternode. So, and UTXO has yet to hit the DeFi launch territory where the velocity and momentum of price appreciation has not hit UTXO land yet. So it's just something to consider with regard to portfolio balance, risk reward analysis, and never go in, never spread too thin. But this is the type of thing you throw in your back pocket. Man, Cosmos, Chainlink, banned. What's going on in China? This is absolutely hot. I wouldn't get involved with band right now, so bear in mind I talk about this stuff like I'm totally like really excited about it, but I wouldn't want to. I need more market cap, and that's why I have CoinGecko up here. Band's too low of a market cap for me to get involved. I get involved, 100, 150, $200 million market cap, more liquidity, more volume, more established momentum. So bear in mind the macro narrative for Band is absolutely immense. This thing is targeting the Oracle space, of which it's going to capitalize on a portion of the market that Link is literally like a steamroller clearing a path. It's being deployed by the Chinese government. This is not just a fad. This is not 2017. This is not ICOs. This is, you're witnessing the world systemically changing on so many fronts. You factor in the CBDC conversation and the fact that the United States is in on the mix, just not to the same degree that China is. China is going all in on crypto. Um, they need every country around the world is going to need to pivot and pivot hardcore because of what's going on in the financial system, the global debt cycle. Debt is maxed out. This is not sustainable. They all know this at the level of government in all countries, and there's going to be massive systemic shift with regard to monetary systems, monetary policy globally. And this is part of the big picture. Take a look at the comments real quick. In the house, Felipe says yes. David says what's up. Candid says hi, yo. Yeah. Kusama next. Yeah, but Kusama's a big deal because that plays into the Polkadot narrative. So I don't own Kusama. I don't own Polkadot. For me, they're not developed enough. I know Chico talks about it quite often, and for me, I don't do I don't get into projects that don't have established momentum. I don't want 10,000% gains. I'm not looking for that risk reward type of perspective. I'm looking for something to pull 30, 40, 50, 100%. Frankly, Ren, Kyber, Bancor, these guys are pulling hundreds of percent. I don't need more than that. I'm not in it for that $100 bag to turn into 100 grand. That's not what I do, and that's not what I talk about, and that's not what I advocate, and that's just something that doesn't interest me. I want minimized risk and maximize reward, considering the minimized risk. I want to take as least risk as possible while maximizing my potential reward. I'd love to turn 10 grand into 100 grand. Yes, now we're talking. That is the type of plays that I look for. BAM protocol, everything about them is fascinating because they started on Ethereum. They have migrated to a Cosmos sidechain, which is a blockchain unto itself. They still have the band ERC20 on Ethereum, and they talk about interoperability. But the interoperability implementation that they have is not seamless right now. It's not as fluid as what Ren has offered. It's not as fluid as what Syscoin technology provides. It's not even as fluid as what Ethereum Classic provides with their bridge implementation. But frankly, the optimal implementation really is Ren with the one-to-one mint with a decentralized custodian and private keys. So there's so many components to this story. Sometimes it's hard to even keep a seamless narrative to be able to describe it as best possible. For me, Band is something to keep an eye on. For me, Cosmos is to have, and you stake it. There's validators, and you're able to delegate your your holdings to a validator to participate in the process. Bear in mind, there's very significant macro distinctions between Cosmos, Polkadot, and Bitcoin, for instance, and even Ethereum. Cosmos has an infinite supply. Currently, Ethereum has an infinite supply. Ethereum 2.0 is going to pretty much be deflationary if everything plays out as what is being discussed. And that's quite meaningful. So the dynamic is always shifting. It's all over the place about where things are heading. But overall, the cumulative narrative is ridiculous developer interest, advances that are going to change the world. This is building the system that the entire world is going to operate on. And it's not just the stupid um, hype cycle and virality of DeFi, just a stupid acronym. When what you need to do is reorient your perspective on what DeFi is and finance and global finance and monetary systems and the way these countries are still operating on this pathetically antiquated paper fiat. And even when Powell says, yeah, they punch a couple of numbers into the database to digitally print money in one of his uh, mainstream broadcasts, um, it's pathetically antiquated. This changes everything. Decentralized governance is exactly what Cosmos is talking about, what Polkadot's talking about, and frankly, what Ethereum is going to get into with Ethereum 2.0, and what almost all the DeFi projects on Ethereum are trying to target. Decentralized governance. And that's and when then you talk about using these decentralized governance assets as incentives, like what Kyber's doing, and what Comp and Bao did, but Kyber's doing it quite differently. It's a ridiculously large macro narrative to discuss. And as I said, it's hard to keep a straight line without going all over the place, getting so excited about the various parts that are being built. Ample, can't digress too much. I'm happy to talk about Ample in another stream. It has much potential. I'm more interested in Haven Reserve and Kava, but Ample is interesting. It has interesting properties. It's gone vertical. There's no reason for it to go vertical, which is something we'll talk about when we look at the charts. Um, I brought this up because it's all manual right now. ERC 20 to ban chain instructions. So the reason I like Cosmos right now, and it's good for me to be involved for my personal taste, the way the market cap looks, the momentum, the adoption, the consumption, the all in by China is because it has direct integration into Ledger. For me, I need ease of interactivity. You literally add an account in your Ledger Live application, you get some Cosmos into it, and literally the delegation to validators is literally built into Ledger at this point. And that makes all the difference for my consideration. I'm able to manage my assets. Well, bear in mind, I don't shy away from deploying a master node or deploying a Ren Dark node, but I do shy away from manual interacting with ABIs, smart contract interfaces. It's just not something I have the time to dedicate currently. Not that this is overwhelmingly hard, but I just don't find it necessary, and I really want to see band get more traction. I want to see this at about 100, 150, 200 million, and then because that's not the limit. And then once you see this at 100, 150, 200 million, then you're looking at the charts. Then you're looking at the long term, like the weekly on Bancor, following the macro narrative and understanding that who cares about a 10% price dip when you're up 3, 4, 5, 600% when you have upside that's going to put it, off the screen. Do you see my mouse? You can't even point with the mouse where this thing's going to be in 5, 10 years. It's just this is such a systemic component, the notion of providing liquidity and interoperability in the Ethereum ecosystem. But Ethereum is a major component of the global macro system that's being built, and Kyber as well. Bancor is a systemic disruptor with its V2 protocol. It's going to put it in a whole nother category. Um, in many regards, like Ren and like Link, that's what's going to play out with Bancor. And Kyber is not a systemic disruptor, but they are a serious player, particularly because they're positioning themselves as a central nexus of liquidity. And just their entire platform, the way they're approaching it and executing it, is very meaningful. To top it all off, their governance and their deflationary component makes this an extremely important project to follow and consider. And the whole story that I talked about, or at least the title of the stream, was finding entries. So how do you find entries on stuff that's up hundreds and hundreds of percent? And we could probably finally get into that. Let's take a look at the comments. Actually had to use Open Finance DApps to appropriate them. Well, it's complicated. People have no clue. So that's why I do these streams, and I want to bring this important information to folks, because even I struggle at times to put the whole macro narrative together. But that's what's so exciting. I do have a vision and an understanding of this big picture that's forming, and it's just not only exciting for myself, it's exciting to share it with people. Um, yes, thank you, Derek. I try. All right, I try. So I don't want to dive too much into Bangor and Kyber because I want to talk about Ren, Link, and Lend. But this is obviously, I'm going to have to follow up with this next week because these things are on the precipice of a breakout. This thing's in an upward channel. This thing has gone completely sideways since the last local top, and it's just a matter of time. Why? All confluence points to continuation. Look at the macro trend. It's an ascending channel, massive momentum, and unless there is data that points to a change in momentum, the trend continues. That's how trends work. And this is dating back until May, June, July. So we're over 2 months of bullish momentum, and it's not just momentum for Bancorp that you have to consider. You have to consider the entire space. You have to consider the U.S. economy, the Federal Reserve, and the Treasury, and just the general direction of the equities markets, the S&P, the New York Stock Exchange, and Nasdaq. You have to consider all of this, and all things point to ridiculous liquidity, ridiculous appreciation, and this is basically inflation, as these things are inflating in value. And the same goes to Kyber. This thing is straight up a massive bull flag. This is an absolutely enormous bull flag. And look, as you can see on the daily, it seems to be poking out of the prevailing descending channel, which is the trend, the local trend. And if you consider the macro picture of the recent price action, the trend is bullish. So when you have a bullish break from the local trend formation, considering the bullish macro narrative, I mean, just look at these rolling hills on the Stoch and the MACD. This is the confluence of bullishness is absolutely tantalizing. And you pull it out in the 4 hour and the 1 hour, and you can see the break. And it's just going to keep, whether it goes up slow, hopefully it goes up slow. Because if it goes up, 50%, it's going to come crashing down, which is exactly what we're looking at on the Ren chart. This thing is straight up parabolic. It's in price discovery mode. Now, as I've said countless times, Ren is an outlier. It is Link. It is a systemic disruptor. It's Bancor. Bancor is a systemic disruptor with their V2 technology and the elimination of impermanent loss. There is no other product in the space that is even remotely in the position to achieve the functionality that Ren offers. Aside from a massive shift in the macro narrative, a trend shift where cryptocurrencies start to depreciate, this trend will continue, as I mentioned with Bancor and Kyber. This is a ridiculous bullish trend. This is the weekly. Oh, goodness. So look at the MACD on the weekly. It's ascending, the ascending signal. Look at the bullishness on the Stoch. There's no lower low. It's continuously higher lows. Clearly, there's room for a pullback on the Stoch on the weekly, but I tend to look at the daily. The daily is compared to the 4 hour, and obviously you get into shorter time frames as you get a little antsy looking for information. So I think Ren could pull back more. I think there's more room to pull back. We didn't reach a completely overbought position. It's kind of ranging, so I think we could see some continued descending price action over a period of time. But as you can see here, look on the weekly, look in the daily. So it's stuck. So there's support. There's substantial support here. It would have to have so much bearish momentum to break this support for the trend direction to start heading in the opposite direction. I don't see even remotely reasonable considering the data that I'm seeing. The 4 hour shows a bit of a different picture. The 4 hour shows more of a consistent picture with what I'm talking about of slow depreciation, just very slow. It's not going to be a plummet. And you know, folks that just bought at the local high see a 20-30% pullback, and they're like, "What's going on?" And that's just because they didn't find the proper price, proper price for entry. You're at an all-time high. You're way above the averages. It's inevitable that you're going to come back to the averages. You're going to retest. It failed. It broke through the averages, and it's barely poking its head out. I expect this to break through the averages again onto the downside and probably paint some lower lows and lower highs. But if you go to the daily, you're way above the averages. This thing could pull back, was that 1695, and you're still above the averages. Look at that. This thing could pull back to here, even a little bit lower. Here, let's take a look at the daily real quick. This thing could pull back, you know, even if it pulls back to the bottom, 1462. On the 4 hour, 1462 is right about here. So this thing could pull back to here. And you know what that would do to the price? You're talking about 30, what is that, 18 to 14. That's 400 points on 18. That's a 25%, to 25% give or take from its current price. And it would still be ridiculously, in fact, that would be a ridiculously bullish sign on the daily chart. If it dropped 25% from where it is and bounced 10%, you know how good that would look on the daily? This is why the long-term trends are so important and the short-term is irrelevant. So you got to find your entries. So this is where I would wait. Now, bear in mind, I don't wait. I have dark nodes and I don't trade this thing. I set it and forget it. So this is waiting. And what you want to wait for, this is how you find an entry. And you find the bullish change in trend direction. Look at the averages on the shorter time frames. 1 hour, you're above the trend. 30-minute, you're above the trend. 15, this looks like, oh, it's bottomed down the RSI, so this could bounce. 5-minute, below the trend. And look at the weakness on the RSI. So this thing, to me, looks like it's going to continue a slow depreciation for a period of time, below the trend, below the trend. When you see what I saw last night on Bancor, above the trend on the daily, above the averages, holding support at the averages. All right, it broke the trend on the 1 hour, broke the trend on the 30, 15, 5. So look, this looks like it could start pushing up again. It had a big dip. This was a big dip. But if this breaks through, clearly we're in good RSI territory for a nice push to the upside. This breaks through then on the 15, you want to see a good entry is when you see that the price action is above support. When you see it fighting support, it means there's potential for more downside. And that's where we are with Ren. Big macro narrative, Ren is a systemic disruptor, just like Link. Link is, we all know, China's deploying the nodes, as I've said. This thing's parabolic. So how the hell do you find a price entry? Clearly, on the weekly, we are way above the averages. We have immense support. The overall macro narrative is just bullish continuation. But the question to consider is, where does it pull back to? Does it continue? Even if it continues, and this is what's so important to consider with the equities market, even if it continues, what is the potential upside compared to the downside? The downside potential is massive, 20, 30, 40%. You know, 20% dip on Ren. And what was it go another 5%, another 10%? the risk reward is skewed to the downside. I hold massive BD. My largest bag is BDC candidate. That is my large bag. I pulled out some BTC actually today and dumped it into Cosmos. That was my and I also so I pulled out 33% of my BTC position, put 15 half of the 33 into Bancor because my goal is for a Bancor rip, and then I dump my a portion of my Bancor. So I have a particular quantity of Bancor in mind and Kyber network in mind that is not traded. I have a number that I've established that is the long-term position. And what you do is you need to grow your assets as well. You need to accumulate more Bitcoin and Ethereum because that's how you accumulate wealth. So I have a position assigned to the asset greater than the quantity I assigned to my long-term position. Won't get into the particular quantities, but let's say my trading position on Bancor is less than 100% more. My trading position for Kyber is 100% more. So I'll dump 50% of Kyber on the next rip, accumulate more Ethereum. For Bancor, it's for about 60%. A 60% it was like a creamy top, a foamy layer on a latte on top of a protocol that's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I can't look at many other things because there's so many protocols that are absolutely doing crazy things, but there's only a couple that are systemic disruptors. Bancor is systemic disruptor. Kyber is deflationary. There's so few deflationary assets. Ren, systemic disruptor. Link, systemic disruptor. I don't hold Link. I'm currently priced out of it. I would need to make some serious gains on some plays in order to get the position size that I think is meaningful. Probably need about 10,000 Link to have a meaningful position. At least that's what I would think is a meaningful position. So I cannot have that right now. It's just not something I can do. Link, let's take a look at the shorter term time frames. Above support, above support, below support, but RSI is bottomed. Below support, but RSI is bottomed. We're going too short of the time frames. This thing could rip up above. It could rip right through the averages. 4 hour oversold. How do you like that? The technical analysis. So it's a little over, it's overbought on the weekly, on the daily, but it's not entirely overbought. And on the 4 hour, it's entirely oversold. You know, this thing could rip. I mean, look, this is what's most interesting. Look at the high. It did paint a new higher high, but look at the RSI, which is basically pressure and momentum. It fell to oversold and it went horizontal. It's basically horizontal with the price action, and this is something we see in Bancor. Let's pull out to the 4 hour. So this is something we see in Bancor. Actually, we see it in Kyber even better, but let's take a look at the daily and maybe we'll see it. Yeah. So look at the high, and bear in mind what's most interesting about Bancor is that it's ranging in the RSI. There has been no real blow off tops. It has not entered overbought, and this is the first time since so June 6th that it really hit oversold. But here's what's most interesting: it's in very oversold territory, but look at the price action. It's been completely horizontal. So that's what happens with the MACD. It's been horizontal price action, which means the MACD isn't going down. This is basically trend direction. And and then if you're on the weekly and you look at the MACD, it's got a fair amount of room to run. The daily looks better on the MACD. I mean, look at the perspective. Look how much room to run it has on the MACD compared to uh, trend directions. back in 2018. Oh, this thing could run. But I hope for more sustainable price action. You don't want to see big rips. I mean, this is an extremely healthy chart in my opinion. We have big rips and basically within a local trend formation, which is, a couple months at this point. But the most exciting aspect of this is the most recent price action. We had a big rip and completely horizontal price action. So this just looks really good. This is the type of thing you hold a position, you set a stop loss, and you sit on your hands and you go do something else. This is a set it and forget it. You got a stop loss. It's an automated process. The the odds of this breaking down are just would be awkward. The confluence is so bullish. So this is your stop loss, set it, forget it, and let it rip. Same thing with Kyber, and just Ren looks really good. Ren on the daily. Oh, go to the left. We're at 12:30 already. Let me take a look at the comments real quick, see what I missed. Thanks, man, honest man. So yeah, Bitcoin is my largest. Ethereum, you need to accumulate. It's one of the three large networks. I mean, I got to look back at on Elrond and see how it fits into the macro narrative. But Cosmos is fire number two. Polkadot has ridiculous potential. It's not where I would get in. It doesn't have the market cap, but it sure as hell has the developer activity. So for me, I keep my eye on that boy and really close. Um, Here's why Ren is ridiculous right now. Look at the RSI. On the daily, it's completely bottomed out. And then you look at the weekly, and it's pulled back. So this could pop back up. It's possible that we could see some continued downward price action, which is what I mentioned. So I would keep my eye on Ren just for a little bit. You could see another dip down, more towards the support right around here, more towards the 1700, which would be a fair amount of percentage points downward. Um, for me, it would be too risky to get in now. Wait, if you get a position down here, the uh, the daily chart says you got in a good position. RSI is bottomed, and overall bullish macro narrative. All right, I ran out of time, but Link, systemic disruptor. Watch the charts. I could talk about the charts more when time permits. But Lend is also very meaningful. They are a systemic disruptor because they were first out of the gate lending disruption. Their original website, everything they had was not what they currently have. They are an evolved platform that is extensively robust and mature, and they are something to keep an eye on. And just because you see something up 1,000%, you know, just like the equities markets with the blow off tops, it doesn't mean much when you consider the big picture. Got to consider the big picture. This thing could keep going. So follow the trends, look for a change in trend direction, and there is no change in trend direction in sight, considering the global macro narrative of global financial, CBDCs, China going all in on cryptocurrency. Absolutely incredible. All right. Frank says 1550, stuff like that. Yeah, but that's details. We'll get into another time. Thank you, everyone. Digibuyer Just Nibble says, thanks, man. Always a pleasure. I appreciate the time that we spend together. July 17, 12:30. I will see you next time. Peace.